Notre Dame fans, we have made it to the midway points of the 2024 season. I'm Tyler Horka. That's Jack Sobel. This is Hey Horka, obviously the show where we take some questions from blueandgold.com message board subscribers and answer them. Obviously, we're also answering your questions if you're in the comments. We appreciate you guys for watching this YouTube show live, and then everyone watching back on Apple and Spotify podcasts. We appreciate y'all as well. If you are on YouTube, go ahead and like this video, subscribe to our channel because we are here every Wednesday. We've got so many other things going on at this YouTube channel as well. Jack, how are you, man? Like I said, this is the midway point. We're already halfway through your second season on the Notre Dame beat. It flies by, dude.
Yeah, in the approximately 3,000 years since the Texas A&M game, it has certainly, not exactly flown by at this point. We've had, 3 seasons. I think it was Patrick Engel who texted me. I was texting him about setting up an interview, and I think he said that we've had 3 seasons worth of storylines. In 6, I think then it was 5 games. So yeah, it's been fun. But I'm excited to see what happens in the second half because we have 2, I would say, interesting games coming up. 2 interesting games coming up against Georgia Tech and a really good Navy team. Was doing some work on them. I think we both were today for the magazine coming up. So a lot of good stuff to talk about in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, it's a good point, man. Like, it felt like bye week number 1 for Notre Dame, as soon as you lost to Northern Illinois, was just get there without another loss, reset. What was that, 4-1 at that time, right? Yeah, they've only played 1 game out of the bye. So this one would, you would really feel nice if you still have that 1 loss, obviously. I've kind of flip-flopped. I don't know if 2 losses is the end for Notre Dame at this point because Army and Navy look so good. USC's kind of taken some hits. What is that, a 500 football team at this point? So that's the thing, Jack. College football season, you mentioned it. The storylines are always changing. I don't know if Notre Dame's schedule is vastly better than we thought it was, but it might not be as bad as we thought it was, and that could help Notre Dame. But like I said, just if you can win all these games, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later on in the show. I think we're going to end this show with that. If you're 11-1, what a season, right, Jack? Because Army and Navy are ranked together for the first time since 1960. You still do have to go on the road and play USC, which the LA Coliseum has not been a kind place to Notre Dame lately. This weekend is huge, Jack. We'll talk a little bit about that too. Like, neutral site game, basically in the backyard of Georgia Tech's. That is Georgia Tech's backyard. You're in Atlanta. Brent Key talked about that this week, that he's excited to see a lot of Georgia Tech fans there. I think there's going to be a lot of Notre Dame fans there too, and he said that. But this season, all of a sudden, you're 5-1. I think a lot of people expected this team to be 5-1 at this point, and everything's ahead of you. And it feels a lot more exciting now than it did when we were writing about Notre Dame losing to Northern Illinois on September 8th or 7th or whenever that was.
Yeah, I think we still have to say again, like, I don't know how much circumstances have changed since the NIU game. Like, you still need, I firmly believe you still need to win out. I don't think with Notre Dame's schedule, 2 losses is going to get you in with some of these SEC teams and their schedules. And so, yeah, I will still hammer home the point, as I do every week, that fundamentally nothing has really changed. This is still a good team. This is still a team that can put up a performance like they did against NIU at any moment. And that's what I thought after NIU. That's what I think now. And, like, yes, they've been good since then. The passing offense certainly looks better, like we thought it would throughout the season. It has improved every game. So yeah, I think I still think this team has a lot to prove. To sum that up.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, I don't know how. Let me take a look at the questions we got again. It's not very Georgia Tech specific, so let's talk about that a little bit right now. 5-2 football team. So much depends on if Haynes King is playing in this game for me. I don't even know a whole lot about the backup. I haven't studied him to this point. I saw you obviously referencing something that Marcus Freeman said where their offense doesn't change a whole lot scheme-wise, but Haynes King's got to be a lot better than this backup. I think it's 8 touchdowns, 1 pick. He can run like crazy. They don't beat North Carolina last week without the way that he runs. And obviously Jamal Haynes as well as a very good running back. He's had his 2 best games of the season in the last 2 games. So quickly before we dive into these Notre Dame centric questions, Georgia Tech, the defense is another thing entirely, but it could pose some problems for a Notre Dame defense that all of a sudden is without another starter. That's kind of been a storyline this year. You mentioned those storylines. That's definitely been one of them. Not a cakewalk, especially leaving the state of Indiana for the first time since you referenced it, Jack, week 1 in that Texas A&M game.
Yeah, quick note on Georgia Tech. I think the Yellow Jackets, if Haynes King does not play, I really can't see Notre Dame losing this game. Like, he is so centric. He's similar to Riley Leonard in a way that he's just so centric to everything they do. Yep. And Georgia Tech doesn't have the quarterback depth that Notre Dame does to make up for that. The backup, they use him similarly to Stanford last week with Justin Lamson. They use him as a short yardage guy. So the raw numbers aren't going to be great in terms of rushing, but he can run. I just don't know if we just haven't seen him throw. And there's a reason like Haynes King is so valuable to everything they do. It is going to be huge for the D-line. I don't think we have a question there about them, so I'll hammer this now. The D-line is going to need to play like they did last week in creating havoc up front, because this is a good run game, and getting to Haynes King, because no one, and again, for the sake of argument, we'll assume Haynes King is playing, because if they don't, a lot of what we're saying is moot. Haynes King has not been pressured whatsoever this year. He's been sacked once for 1 yard. That's crazy at this stage of the season. The line has done well. He's always been good at avoiding sacks, and he's a considerably worse quarterback when he gets pressured in terms of throwing the ball downfield. So the D-line is going to need to step up, whether that's with Al Golden dialing up some blitzes, whether that's with the front four getting pressure. Howard Cross and Riley Mills were huge last week. They'll need to be huge again. If Notre Dame can do enough up front to rattle King, I think they win this game.
Yeah, it's a good point. And it's funny that you mentioned the 1 sack, because one of my weekly duties at blueandgold.com is going back, listening to the opposing coach press conference, everything that Brent Key said. And I guess this would have been 2 weeks ago. I was kind of doing some pre-scouting, or maybe it was his post-game press conference. I'm not sure. But he brought up that sack, Jack, and he was like, that was actually a design quarterback run. So I would like that to go down that way in the stat book. But yeah, you know, the NCAA is always going to say that that was a sack. And Brent Key was like, no, it was not a sack. It was a rushing attempt. So really, he has not been sacked. And that further accentuates Jack's point. We do have a super chat here, Jack. It's a little early for this. 2-3 weeks? The first college football playoff poll comes out. What is it, like the 4th, the 5th, the first week of November? Does that sound right, Jack?
Yes, November. It comes out election night, so that's going to be fun for all of us. Yeah,
the biggest news in the night. CFP poll comes out.
Yeah,
it's a good question though to start thinking about it. Notre Dame is number 12 in the AP poll, number 11 in the coaches poll, I believe. There is some discrepancy and some disparities between these when they come out. The selection committee thinks differently than the coaches do. The media does. So, yeah, I mean, if Notre Dame is a 1-loss team at that point, probably in the top 8 by then, Jack. It's been a steady. There's another one of my weekly duties is doing the poll recap on Sundays as you're coaching your flag football team. And it's been a steady climb ever since that Northern Illinois loss. I think Notre Dame dropped down to like 18. Bam, here they are, 11-12. So, yeah, you take care of business. Notre Dame will be a top 10 team at that time. And then, Jack, that's when you talk about I don't think they can lose in a second game, that narrative. If you only get up to like 8 or 9 and then you lose again to any one of these teams, all of a sudden you're back down to in that 15 to 18 range. And at that point, it's probably too little too late to get back into the top 12.
Yeah, again, to answer Carl's super chat, like, this stuff tends to sort itself out. Like, if Clemson wins out, that means they beat Miami in the ACC championship, and they're a top 4 team with a bye anyway. If they don't win out, they're a 2-loss team, and I can't see them being ahead of Notre Dame in that case. So, like, you talk about 1-loss Clemson, like that's definitely going to sort itself out. you talk about Iowa State. I can't see the Big 12 being a multi-bid league at this stage. So again, if Iowa State wins out, or if like BYU, I think is the only other undefeated Big 12 team. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong there. But then like if BYU right. wins out, or Iowa State wins out, obviously whoever if they do that, they're a top 4 seed. Their seeding doesn't affect Notre Dame. What is intriguing to me, if there's an undefeated Big 12 or ACC team and they lose in the conference championship, how are they treated? That's the big thing that's intriguing for me. But again, like I like you said, it's way too early to worry about that. I think because this stuff really does tend to sort itself out, and I don't see any way an 11-1 Notre Dame team is left out of the playoff.
So what you're saying is there is a long, long time before we have to worry about any of that. Unfortunately, long time before you guys can come back to Augie's locker room for a home game weekend. We're not going to see you guys until November 9th, Florida State. And then it's the very next week, I believe, Virginia after that. And then that's it for games in South Bend. But if you are local and you haven't stopped into Augie's locker room, I would definitely check it out, because we know you love Notre Dame memorabilia and one-of-a-kind Notre Dame items. You can only find them at one place. That is Augie's locker room. Augie's locker room has moved to a new location as of last fall. Come see Augie at 1733 North Ironwood Drive in South Bend, right down the street from Notre Dame. It's a great location. When you guys come for a game, you got to make time for Augie's locker room. They have a wide selection of Notre Dame Stadium pieces, jerseys, helmets, autographs, and one-of-a-kind Rockney items. If you're watching on YouTube, it's all the stuff that you're seeing here on your screen. You can find exclusive Joe Montana signed items and famous sculptor Jerry McKenna's replicas of the bronze statues around the stadium. Augie gets new items all the time. If he doesn't have it in his store, he will find it for you. Visit Augie at 1733 North Ironwood Drive in South Bend and see the vintage helmet display dating back to 1890. He's got some amazing items. You want to see them, visit augieslockerroom.com or call him at 574-277-6363. All right, Jack, let's get into some of these questions from Notre Dame fans from the Loose Emoji message board. And we're talking Notre Dame's offense because it seems like we're always talking Notre Dame's offense. We saw probably the best all-around version of it against Stanford. I get it. The numbers in totality were better against Purdue, but Purdue stinks. And you were able to run all over them, and Riley Leonard didn't need to play in the second half. What Riley Leonard did do against Stanford was throw the ball better than he has since he's gotten to Notre Dame. So all of that in mind, how much better can the Notre Dame offense, and specifically Riley Leonard, be? I'll start out with something quick, then hand it off to you. I think last week is that's everything that you want from the Notre Dame offense. Riley Leonard passed for 229 yards. He added 30 yards on the ground, which is not like his biggest output, but he gave you a touchdown and he gave you enough there. He only ran 6 times.
He didn't need to.
Jeremiah Love only ran 6 times. And I think that's the one discrepancy from what I visualize as the, Class A best version of Notre Dame's offense. But he ran a 39-yarder into the end zone. Jadarian Price got in the end zone from 16 yards. It was all working. We mentioned all the wide receivers and pass catchers that caught footballs. I think it was 11 by the end of it. Steve Angeli came in for a quarter, and I think up to that maybe. So it's double digits. Riley Leonard had 9 of those. It's all working. Now it's Stanford, and this is the one thing that I answered on the message board in response to this question from Papa Bear 2022 was, I think when you play a better defense, and we've seen this, like the Louisville game almost as an example, Riley Leonard's going to be more in that 150 to 200-yard passing range. They're going to run him a little bit more because they know that's effective and it works. So he's up around 50, 75 on a really good day, 100 yards. But he's still giving you 200, 250, maybe even 250 to 300 total yards. That is Riley Leonard's sweet spot for a really good game. And the scores, he's not turning the ball over. Jeremiah Love gives you what he's giving you. I don't know if it gets much better than we saw last week, but the one thing I will say is if the offensive line continues to improve and you have a really solid unit across the board in these latter couple months of the season, and somehow you get Mitchell Evans and Jordan Faison involved, and all of a sudden there's a couple new elements to your pass game that we haven't seen. Because let's face it, Mitchell Evans has been coming back, and we haven't seen that Mitchell Evans yet. Jordan Faison's been injured since week 1. We haven't really seen him at all. You get those guys in the mix, and all the pass catching that just happened against Stanford gets going as well. That's how it gets just a tiny bit better to me, Jack. But I don't know how it gets a whole lot better.
Well, I think it gets better with more consistency. I should start with I could not possibly care less how many total passing yards Riley Leonard has. Like that just
Mark with glasses cares. 108th in pass efficiency. That's different than like passing.
That's not total pass. Like if he throws 15 times, I'm okay with him throwing for 150 yards.
Yeah.
Like passing efficiency is what matters, and passing consistency is what matters. I also think it's slightly disingenuous to pull up full season numbers, given that they're clearly getting better every week. So I think we can't forget about early in the season, but we have to acknowledge that they are getting better every week. And I think it's realistic to expect them to continue improving. I think obviously we can't expect them to score 49 points every week. What we can expect in terms of improvement is I want to see more consistency out of Riley Leonard. I think Leonard was good against Stanford, but he was by no means perfect. And we saw some of that at Duke. We talked about that after the game. I did the offense rewatch earlier today. I think he missed some throws. He still missed some throws that a quarterback shouldn't miss. There was one to Jaden Thomas where he kind of found the soft spot in the zone. He just sailed it. He kind of pulled the ball too far to the left. There was one earlier in the game. This is probably the only other specific example I can think of where he had Chris Mitchell open on the backside slant, and he didn't see him. This was the holding penalty that Anthony Knapp had when Leonard escaped the pocket. He dropped his eyes a little too quickly. If he didn't, he would have seen he had Mitchell pretty open on the backside slant. So I want to see more consistency out of that, because if you see more consistency out of that, that would prevent teams from playing zone as much as they do, because we're seeing a lot of soft cover 3 zones against Notre Dame because they're content making Riley Leonard taking some of those hole shots, the 5 to 6 yard slants, the little shot over the middle to Jane Greathouse that went for 19 yards earlier, that kind of zone beater concept. They're content letting Notre Dame take those, in large part because they don't want Riley Leonard to run, and playing zone really prevents a lot of that, because you're having your defenders with their eyes on the quarterback. So teams are playing so much zone against Notre Dame. If Leonard is consistently hitting these, that could force teams to play a little bit more man. And if teams play more man, I think that's a great way to get Jaden Greathouse going, because he shreds man coverage in the slot. I think it's a great way to get Mitchell Evans going, because he's hard to cover one-on-one. That's a way you can get some more yards after the catch that have been lacking a little bit from this Notre Dame team. So being more consistent against the zone, and then at that point, teams play more man, and then you can get some of those guys like the Greathouse or an Evans or Faison when he comes back on.
Yeah, those short passes are the reason for this. Mark with glasses. We are 121st in yards per completion. Jack, you mentioned it. Not a whole lot of yak. So that yards after catch, that helps a statistic like this, because and that's what, like, earlier in the year, people were getting on my case about. I was saying Riley Leonard hasn't thrown the ball 20 yards downfield at all. And they kept telling me, Bo Collins catch against Texas A&M, Bo Collins. I was like, technically he backed into a 20-yard catch, and Riley Leonard actually didn't throw that ball 20 yards downfield. That's where I'm going with this next point, Jack, is I think the downfield passing could still be better and or present. And he needs to hit, Riley Leonard does, those shorter passes with more regularity. That's the consistency piece that you're talking about, because then you won't have a couple of safeties sitting over the top and deterring Leonard from looking down there at all, or Notre Dame running any concept that results in Chris Mitchell ending up downfield, or Jaden Greathouse or anyone like that. But here's my question to you. You mentioned Jaden Greathouse being such a good man coverage beater because he's so hard to cover. Why haven't we seen more zone beaters? Like, I mean, the Stanford one, he was so wide open. That's just Stanford being Stanford. I saw that replay and I was like, my goodness, Like any one of us could have ran to the middle of the field and caught that and gone for a first down. And that's why Notre Dame is throwing the ball on 3rd and 2. And I think everyone in the press box was thinking, this is Riley Leonard run all the way. And I was so pleased just watching from like a football watcher's perspective. Oh my gosh, they're actually throwing this ball on 3rd and 2. Like they have confidence in that. And then I saw Greathouse wide open over the middle, thinking, okay, that's why they're doing this. It's Stanford. He's wide open. But this is what I asked Mike Denbrock yesterday, and I think you actually put it on social media. I'll probably cue it up here. I think Notre Dame might feel like it's on the verge of doing that and going into a game with such confidence in the game plan that it's going to work against anybody. And that's not a place that they were at against like Northern Illinois. I don't even think it's a place that they were at against Miami, Ohio. They went in thinking this might work. We don't know. And when all else failed, what did they do in the first half of both of those games? Just run Riley because that's all we got. I think they're moving away from that a little bit, Jack. And that's an answer to this question is how can the Notre Dame offense be better? Well, it can go into games against Georgia Tech, against Navy, against Army, some of these teams saying, we like what we're going to do, and we're going to do it no matter who we're playing. I think that's a big step forward.
Yeah, and to answer your question about why we haven't seen more zone beaters, like they're calling the zone beaters. They're for sure calling them. Leonard just needs to hit them with more consistency. And to Leonard's credit, he has from earlier in the season. They lost to NIU primarily because they called a bunch of zone beaters and Leonard just didn't throw the football because he didn't trust himself or his arm or whatever. And and in the second half, he couldn't run enough to compensate. But it's just about keep calling those zone beaters against the zone because they're working. Keep hitting them with more consistency. That'll force defenses to play more man coverage, which will open up the quarterback run game. And some of these targets like a Greathouse or an Evans who have started slowly. I think that's the biggest key right now is just keep hitting the zone beaters with consistency. There's a debate in the comments, by the way, right now about why Notre Dame is ranked below Iowa State. It is because Notre Dame has lost to Northern Illinois and Iowa State has not. It's just fairly simple at the moment.
Bad losses will affect your ranking. That's just the way it works. Here's the quote from Mike Denbrock that I was referencing. You put it out there on social media. I asked him the question, basically, do you guys feel like what you did against Stanford, you can do against anybody? You can go in with a game plan and execute it because that's what happened against the Cardinal. I mean, everyone that we've talked to, Jack, they said, we were going to go in, Riley Leonard was going to throw it, dink and dunk, whatever you want to. I mean, look at the first series. It was 3 passes to Bo Collins. If he doesn't drop the one, Bo Collins has like 35, 40 yards in the first 3 plays of the game. That was the game plan. It was working. They stuck to it. And Mike Denbrock says, I think really over the course of the last couple of weeks, 3 weeks, like we've been talking about, what we've been seeing, what we've seen, where we've seen it coming, seen it kind of developing. He's talking like a coach here, Jack. And then boom. So like I think that last part of the quote is, and then boom, like they finally feel that's happening, which the catharsis was necessary. Like they needed this, and it's happening. And look, if they fall flat on their face against Georgia Tech, we're having a completely different conversation. They can't beat Navy, we're having a completely different conversation. But this is the conversation that we're having right now. I think you said it best a couple of minutes ago. They're improving. It doesn't matter what you thought about them in September or who you think they're playing. They're improving right now.
Right, and I think we've been saying this for months. Like, and Mike Denbrock has been saying it for months. Like, the sentiment from Notre Dame was we're not going to be great on offense early, and people freaked out about that. People thought we were underestimating them before the season. Then after NIU, everyone wanted Riley's head, and then now everyone's surprised when it's working. Like this was the plan. The qualifier that we have to say is that the plan didn't include losing to NIU because they didn't think it would be that bad that early, but they knew it would be rough. They knew it would be a work in progress. And I think we talked about this on the show last week that Denbrock's rhetoric was changing after the bye week. He went from we're a work in progress to we figured it out. And that's paraphrasing, that's oversimplifying it, but he went that's what the general message went from and to last week. And then you saw it, and then all we've heard from Denbrock is more confidence. And I think that's something that Notre Dame fans can really look forward to. I do think quick note again on Georgia Tech. that Georgia Tech's pass defense is like Stanford, vulnerable at the second level. I think they're probably going to play zone again because that's what every team plays against Notre Dame. And these linebackers have tended to give up a lot. I don't have the exact stats pulled up. Actually, yes, I do, because I have my on paper article pulled up. So Georgia Tech, their linebackers, Efford and Tatum. Efford's the one with the big neck plate. Have allowed
who almost had a targeting call, I think, by the way. Like he's lucky to be playing in this first half. I think they called targeting, took it back. Yeah.
Interesting. PFF, I think, entering the UNC game, had them at 24 receptions allowed on 29 targets for 310 yards. That's 10.7 yards per attempt. That's a vulnerable second level that Notre Dame can exploit. And I think that's where they're going to target again, like they did against Stanford.
So we'll go quickly on this one because I think I know your answer. And so here's the question. Do you think opposing defenses will play DBs back a bit more now that Riley Leonard and the Notre Dame offense seems to have figured some things out? Jack, is this not what teams have kind of been doing in the first place? Like with all the zone coverage? I mean, zone and man is completely different, but I think it's more so like, our team's going to stop loading the box?
Yeah, I think that's what Arafan was asking.
Yeah.
He just phrased it a little. I misphrased it a little bit, but I understand what he's asking. And my answer is like, if I'm Notre Dame, I love that. That means I can run the ball more, which is again still the offensive identity. Which none of the individual rushers had a lot of carries, in large part because their services were no longer required after the third quarter, but they kept running it even though they had a couple like one or two negative plays and a few other stuffs. They stuck with the run game and eventually it broke. And that's the identity of this team. No matter how good the passing game gets over time, that's still going to be the identity of this team. And if the passing game that's good enough for 6-man boxes instead of 7- and 8-man boxes, fantastic. Here comes Riley Leonard, Jadarian Price, and Jeremiah Love.
Yeah, and I think Brent Key in his like I said, I watched those opposing coach press conferences. He's still kind of let it slip, and he said, "Yeah, we're gonna put another hat in the box, stop that run game." So like that's the way that teams are playing Notre Dame right now. But this question is, hey, if that changes, what changes with the Notre Dame offense? And I think you're exactly right in saying, hey, take a guy out of there. All of a sudden, you can run a little bit better. If the passing game is what you think it can be, you could still throw it in those situations. I mean, that's what a good offense is. And we weren't seeing good offense from Notre Dame early in the year. I mean, it was one-dimensional, run the ball, run the quarterback, all of those different things. Now you're finally starting to see some of that change. And Mike Denbrock is changing his rhetoric. I think that was a really good point that you made. I've been blown away just by – he's always a chipper guy, but he was having to lighten the mood a little bit early on, Jack, in some of those Tuesday sessions. You know, he was cracking some jokes when times weren't so great. Now he's actually, it feels like he's comfortable, he's confident, and Notre Dame's offense is going in the right direction. So I don't think we need to spend too much more time on that one unless you've got anything else to say.
Yeah, I'll just echo what you said about, like, you know, if teams continue loading the box after Notre Dame gets his passing game figured out, fine. RPOs, throw over the top like you did against Stanford. If they don't, fine. That's again, like you said, it was a great point you made. That's what good offenses do. You can beat teams no matter what they do. And I suspect that teams will continue loading the box because, but this time it's not going to be about, oh, we don't think Riley Leonard can beat us. It's, oh, we're worried about Riley Leonard, Jadarian Price, and Jeremiah Love beating us.
That's when you know you have a good offense. You know, it's chess, not checkers. Checkers, you can only move one way, right? If you've got a good chessboard and a good chess mind, you're going to beat guys, and they're not going to know what happened, right? They're going to be like, oh, man, this is what I was keyed in on, and then that happened. That's chess, not checkers. That's the old saying right there. So the big news of the week, obviously, Benjamin Morrison is done for the season with a hip injury that requires surgery. So this one is a Morrison-focused question. Shout out to Aerofan624 for really running the Hey Horka show this week. Hey Horka brought to you by Aerofan624 and Augie's Locker Room. So what does need to change in the secondary and overall scheme of the Notre Dame defense to keep the passing defense elite without Benjamin Morrison? And I think it's a really good question because we talk about this pass efficiency, Jack, and that's basically any team that Notre Dame goes up against, it shuts down that team's passing offense. Like you can't get anything easy against Notre Dame. And I think so much of that over the last 2 years, ranked number 1 in that statistic in 2023, ranked number 5 currently in 20. Like we're talking about, maybe the Notre Dame defense. I think that's changed in the last couple of weeks, but there was a moment there where we're like, this defense isn't as good as last year's. They're basically right there with the chance to be just as good, if not better, which is what we thought going into the year. But you lose probably the best player on the unit. So what happens now? Like how do you go into a ball game thinking, yeah, we know we're going to shut down this team's passing attack when our first round NFL draft pick corner is not on the field? My answer is, well, maybe Leonard Moore, and Benjamin Morrison said it himself. Maybe Leonard Moore is a future first round NFL draft pick in his own right. And guys, this is right about the time when Benjamin Morrison became Benjamin Morrison in 2022. He had 6 interceptions in the last 5 games of that season. I don't really know if Leonard Moore can get, to that level of superstar status because Benjamin Morrison was playing 30 snaps from the very beginning of that season against Ohio State. Like he was in the thick of it. And by the time it was October, November, a star was born. Leonard Moore's getting a little bit more thrown into the fire. I do think it helps that he played 76 snaps against Louisville, against a team that was throwing it like crazy. Tyler Shuck, a couple really good wide receivers. He had to go against that. He took his lumps in that game, but Notre Dame still came out a winner. So my answer is you trust in that kid. And if you're Al Golden, you still have a lot of really good players at every single level of this defense. You kind of just have to keep doing what you've been doing, Jack, and just trust that Leonard Moore is one of these superstar corners that, you've been kind of used to growing here at Notre Dame the last couple of seasons. I don't know if there's anything you can do differently. It's injuries suck, and that's what's happened to this team. And you kind of got to just, roll with it and roll with the punches.
Yeah, for sure. I think you said it best on the board that they don't have to change anything scheme-wise at the moment. If you lose either Leonard Moore or Christian Gray, that probably changes. Then you're into real danger mode. And I think you also mentioned that the chances of that happening are probably higher now that Christian Gray and Leonard Moore have to play the entire game if it's close. Because I think from what we've been hearing and talking to Al Golden, like Carson Hobbs is getting there, but probably not someone they trust right now to place meaningful snaps in a close game. But someone, if there's another injury, they probably don't have a choice. But with Leonard Moore, he is a guy who I think they believe has a good chance to be a high round draft pick in 2 years. Whether that happens right now, or whether he's good at as good as Benjamin Morrison was as a freshman, I mean that's a really difficult thing to ask anybody because Benjamin Morrison's not normal. So yeah. Who knows? Like he could take his lumps, he could be awesome right away. I think we just have to find out. I thought he held his own against Louisville. The touchdown he gave up was a really good quarterback and a really good wide receiver making a great play. I didn't think it was bad coverage. And the rest, he gave up a few more completions, but he tackled them all for short gains. Forced a fumble on the peanut punch early in the game. He's a good player. He's got the length. He and Christian Gray, if you told me in 2 or 3 years that both of them were first or second round NFL draft picks, I probably wouldn't be surprised. If you told me that one of them fell really low in the draft, I'd probably be a little more surprised. But there's nothing you can do now but commit to Leonard Moore's development, I think.
I think this is happening at like a perfect time for Leonard Moore because going up against a Georgia Tech team that can throw the ball, but Jack, can you name off the top of your head who their best wide receiver is? I know you've been studying him a little bit.
The name eludes me, but he's good. I mean, he certainly has more yards than anyone Notre Dame right now.
So does Navy's top receiver, and that guy's a running back. So we'll get to that next week.
Yeah. He's really good. The number 2 guy is Eric Singleton. He is the outside guy, I believe. So that's a Christian Gray and Leonard Moore test. The slot guy is Malik Rutherford. He's the one who has 40 catches, 509 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's a good player. It's another big game for Jordan Clark. We're seeing more and more slot receivers, and this is why the nickel position is more important than it's ever been, and it's going to continue getting more important as more and more teams find out that the slot is a great way to pick up chunk plays and moving guys in and around there. So Jordan Clark is going to be big this week. You could almost make the argument to just play a big nickel with Rod Hurd and Jordan Clark against Navy, and move Clark outside against a team like Navy, or like they played like a 4-4 defense, and this Navy team passes more than they did last year. So if you're gonna make a scheme change, that's probably what you do. But against Georgia Tech, like, you just got to rely on Clark, you got to rely on Gray, and you got to rely on Leonard Moore. I mean, it's trial by fire. If you're going to do anything in the college football playoff, Leonard Moore is going to need to be playing at a really high level. Then might as well throw him into the fire right now, because if you want to accomplish anything meaningful this season, he's got to be a good player by December.
Exactly why I think this is happening at like the perfect time for him. Georgia Tech's best wide receiver, slot guy, you just mentioned it, Jordan Clark, that's on you. I don't see this as a game that like Leonard Moore gets torched and all of a sudden we're thinking, oh man, this is what Notre Dame's going to be the rest of the year. And then you have Navy. He's not going to get torched in that game. I do think he could be a serviceable player in that game, because Jack, I think one of the best things that he does, like one of his best qualities, he's rangy. He'll go make a tackle. He made a tackle in this Stanford game. I think it was late, didn't matter. But just like the way that he flies around the edge and is able, I think it was even a tackle for loss, or he tackled this guy at the line of scrimmage. Quick, fast, not afraid to make a tackle. Those are the great things about Leonard Moore. And the great thing for him is he's not up against a guy that is just supposed to torch him at any point in the rest of the schedule. So, yeah, it's throwing him into the fire, but it's also, hey, I think you're going to be all right, kid. Like, just do what you do and be confident about it. And that's what Marcus Freeman talks about with these guys, right? Is kid's confident. I see the same thing in him that I see and saw in Benjamin Morrison, 2022. Christian Gray to a lesser extent last year, because you had Morrison, you had Cam Hart. He wasn't going to play a whole lot, but
I think Gray could have been that guy if they needed him to.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it's not that I didn't see it in him. It's just he didn't need to go out there and do it. Because I think I wrote about this at blueandgold.com. I think Christian Gray is like a Benjamin Morrison lookalike, man. Like, and I know they're only 1 year apart, but Morrison kind of took him under his wing and said, "Hey, this is what I did. You can do it too." And I think it's so cool that Morrison is literally saying this about Leonard Moore already. They're 2 years apart, and Morrison sits there in August and says, "Hey, keep an eye on that number 15 kid. He's going to be better than I am here." And this is just 18 months removed from Morrison, or 20 months, whatever, picking off 6 passes in a 5-game stretch as a freshman. He's saying that about another freshman. I think this Notre Dame cornerback group, special group, Leonard Moore is probably going to be just fine. All right, let's move on to this is kind of a fun one here from MVJ1120. Kind of just like opened up the floor for us on this one. Which Notre Dame player, and he didn't specify offense or defense, deserves more snaps? Which Notre Dame player deserves fewer snaps? For more snaps, it's somebody that you mentioned just a few minutes ago with the big nickel package. I think you got to get Rod Hurd on the field, Jack. Just like, I can't get those 2 plays that he made against Louisville out of my head. It could have been complete chaos for Notre Dame in a close game. We're literally sitting there in the press box watching Benjamin Morrison, maybe a precursor, walk off the field, go up the tunnel, don't know if he's going to come back. Like, oh no, what do you do now? What Notre Dame does instantly without even thinking about it. And this goes back to your point about Carson Hobbs maybe not being all the way ready yet. You move Jordan Clark, who has been so good as your nickel. You hate to see him move out of that spot. You move him outside. You put Rod Hurd at nickel. He breaks up 2 passes in a row, gets Notre Dame off the field. I think it was 3rd and 4th down. Like, it was a 4th down stop. Get him off the field. Really good pressure on the 4th down, I think. I think Xavier Watts, which Al Golden loves to blitz Xavier Watts on 4th down. He did it again against Stanford. Yeah. I love watching Xavier Watts just reckless abandon, fly at the quarterback on 4th down. That helped on that play, but Rod Hurd was right where he needed to be, timed it perfectly. Jack, this is the guy who played over 600 snaps at nickel alone in 2023 for Northwestern, played 850 something total snaps. It would have been number one of all Notre Dame defensive players in 2023. Experienced, versatile, veteran dude. I would like to see him play a little bit more. It's just, we're talking about a Notre Dame secondary that's so good. And Don Schuler has been great. Xavier Watts has been great. You can't take away safety snaps from those guys. And then Jordan Clark has been great at nickel. It's tough to take snaps away there. So if you could play a little bit more big nickel, like against Navy, you might see a really good Rod Hurd game against Navy, but I would love to see a really good Rod Hurd game against someone like Georgia Tech, who's going to play a more conventional offense too. I really like his game.
Yeah, I like Rod Hurd's game too. I think I've liked the big nickel packages that they've put out. The dime package obviously works very well on third down. I think he's going to be big in the Navy and Army games, almost as like an extra linebacker. It's a very good situation to run the three safety package. But like you said on the board, like the two players that he's behind, who are Don Schuler and Jordan Clark, like they're also balling out. So you might get him a series here and there at either spot, but you're obviously not replacing, especially Clark. Clark is playing well enough that I just think you don't take him off the field against 11 personnel. Like he has been legitimately awesome for this team. My guy who deserves more snaps is still Jeremiah Love. I know this is a tired talking point, but I think he's gotten better as the season has gone along as a run blocker, which is going to make him really useful in the red zone. Like you saw on the QB counters the past couple of weeks, it's Jeremiah Love clearing the way. You saw him split out wide with the tunnel screen. I would love to see some more of that, especially because like if you what I saw on tape was that you move Jeremiah Love outside, then Riley Leonard sees like, oh, there's no linebackers moving with him. This is going to be easy. Like as soon as I'm sure Mike Denbrock was doing flips as soon as he saw no linebackers move with Love, and I mean that's an automatic 20-yard gain for him. But Love doesn't need to get the ball to be effective in those situations, because if you motion him out and the linebackers goes with him, great. Less numbers in the box. Riley Leonard up the middle. Try to stop it. I think Love doesn't necessarily like he needs more touches than he had last week, but doesn't necessarily need more touches because I like keeping him fresh for the stretch run. He does need more snaps because the threat of him getting the ball is enough to affect the rest of the offense.
Favorite Jeremiah Love stat, and I did some digging on Sunday to find this one, and I made sure that it was correct. Text is kind of small there, but that means the picture of Jeremiah Love is bigger, and that's more important anyway. So I'll read it for you guys. Notre Dame exactly halfway through its regular season. Jeremiah Love has scored at least one touchdown in all 6 of those games. One of just 13 players in college football to enter the end zone in every game this season. That includes quarterbacks, Jack. So we're talking Jalen Milroe. I think there's a couple other quarterbacks on there. Blake Horvath, maybe not, but there was some. It was crazy. And Love would be in this category, Jack. And I stand by the fact that, or the opinion that he should. There were so many guys that I went through their game logs and I saw, like, if they had 7 touchdowns in 5 games or whatever, 6 and 5, they scored in every single game except one. So they had multiple in another. Love would be in that camp. They didn't count that one touchdown against Miami, Ohio. I will still contend to this day. I think I mentioned it once at Hey Horka show that Emil Wagner should have a touchdown, but Mark with glasses is right. Jack, you are right. There are no amount of touches enough for Jeremiah Love. In an alternate universe, he has another uniform on, and he's got like 20 to 25 carries per game, and that's what the team wants to do. Notre Dame's not that team because look at the rushing statistics for this team. Him and Riley Leonard are doing the exact same thing right now. So we've had the discussion before, Jack. Let Riley do it. I think that works better in that way because you have 2 guys doing the same thing. That's probably harder to stop than just one. And, oh, by the way, Jadarian Price is also right in the mix with 6.3 yards per carry. Obviously, he's had maybe not even half as many carries as those guys. Or, I don't know. Maybe it's a little more than half, actually. I don't know what the number is, but he's playing very well as well.
It's around there, yeah.
Yeah, the other guys are just up over 60. Jadarian might be at like 40. I don't know. Anyway, we're going to go to the wrong side of this now. And it's tough to single somebody out like this, but we might have the same exact answer. Who deserves fewer snaps? I don't see it with the Duke transfer, RJ Open, man. Like, he's still getting upward of 30. You do the snap counts, Jack. Was it like 28? Am I wrong in saying that? It was a lot.
Definitely outsnapped by Bryce Young. I want to say it might have been mid to low 20s this time.
Okay. So maybe that
I'll
is
pull it up
coming
right
down.
now. So
but he's still
finish your spiel and I'll pull it up.
Yeah, he's still starting, and I think it's time to start Bryce Young. Give him his first start. Was he outsnapped by Bryce?
Oh, I knew he was outsnapped by Bryce Young by a lot. So Bryce had 39. Josh Burnham had 27, playing both end and Viper. Oben had 23.
Here's my thing, though. Again, I'm not trying to be mean or anything. I think 23 is still a little bit too many, or maybe a lot of bit too many. If you're not going to affect the game in a way that I saw Bryce Young. I mean, Jack, you mentioned you did the offense rewatch. I did the defense today. I saw a play where Bryce Young came from the far side, so he's going against the grain. Ashton Daniels, Stanford's quarterback, is working a little bit to his left, but kind of up the middle to his left. It's 3rd and long. Stanford's trying to make it a little bit more manageable to go for it on 4th down. He might get this first down on 3rd and long, and if you're Notre Dame, if he gets that, you're thinking, geez, we had these guys right where we wanted them. This guy goes and runs for 15 yards and first down. Bryce Young said, no. Came across the grain, dragged him down by his legs, set up a 4th and 5 maybe. Stanford doesn't get it. Notre Dame ball. Those are the types of plays where I'm thinking that's game-changing, because he literally that is an assist. That's a hockey assist, if you will. It's hockey season, to giving Notre Dame the ball back. Bryce Young makes those types of plays. Have we seen RJ Oben do that? I don't think so. And we've only played half a season, so like, you figure these things out as you go. And I think the coaches to their credit have given Oben the benefit of the doubt, but these things are starting to stack up, Jack. And I think we see Bryce Young kind of really take a stranglehold of that position in the second half of the season.
Yeah, I agree. I trying to think of someone else that I would choose for this besides Oben, but I mean, I really can't think of something. Like, it's Oben. It's got to be Oben. Like, I feel bad because he's well liked in that room, or at least he seems like it. But I mean, he's just no juice off the line of scrimmage. Yeah. Just looks like he's stuck in the mud. Mike commented, "Does Kaiser get a shout?" No, I don't think so. I think Kaiser played a good game this week, and I think he's already giving up.
I think he's already playing just enough.
Yeah, I think Kaiser snap count, he had 35 in this game, and that's probably about right where it should be. And for reference, Kingston, Osbury, and Bowen all had 27 and 26. I think you still need to play Kaiser, especially in games coming up against Army and Navy, where you need someone who's 100% option for. So I think Kaiser's playing the correct amount. But like Oben, I think there's just, with Bryce's emergence and Burnham coming back and looking really good, and maybe you still give Oben a few because you need Burnham to play a little Viper. But it's not happening for him, and it's really happening for Bryce Young, like you said. Like, I skimmed through the defense, and like, Bryce Young kept flashing. Like, the quickness he plays with and the burst off the line of scrimmage is insane for 6'7", 258 pounds. I mean, he's a special athlete. Freeman said during the week, like, his hustle, his effort is uncommon at times. It was the phrase Freeman used. And it's just really, really good to see from him. I think he should play more than Oben, like he did this week. Another comment from Mike: do you guys think Jaden Thomas should play more? He's been good when he's been out there, and I think he's been good in his role. The issue is that he plays the same position as Bo Collins, has been far and away their best wide receiver. And I think if you put both of them out there, you probably don't have enough speed on the field. So I think he's probably in the right role right now.
And then Ryan Roll doesn't think that punters are people too, man. A backup punter has to be able to kick farther than 15 yards. He's calling out James Rendell. I think Rendell only punted once in that game for 24 yards, so
yeah,
doesn't help the average there. He looks like a guy that's playing his first year of American football, so I'm not gonna get too down on that. And hey, I've been saying it all. Yeah, go ahead.
The issue is that a lot of guys playing their first year of American football play a lot better than James Rendell is playing right now. I think like if they move on from Rendell after this year, they're probably going to go back to Australia and get another punter, and people are going to freak out. But that's what probably the majority of the country does at this stage.
Do you think they would go back to Australia after it doesn't work the first time?
Yeah, because it worked. How many other places does it work around the country? Like again,
here's my thing though. Like 2 years ago, they went to the Ivy League and got John Sott, and that worked a heck of a lot better than it's working right now. Why don't you just go find another John Sott?
You have to escape the Notre Dame bubble. Like this works so well at so many places around the country, and I don't think you can get away from it just because this one guy didn't work out. Not to say that Rendell's not going to work out. He still has 6 games to improve, and he's certainly shown flashes. And we saw it in practice, but it certainly doesn't look great right now.
Man, they're really ragging on Rendell here. So let's change it up and go to kickers. Marty Biaggi said that Mitch Jeter has a chance to play this week. I don't think you're going to see him kicking off. Jack, I don't really study like the kickoffs when we're up there in the press box. That's a chance for me to like scour stats and whatnot. Were you looking at Eric Goins? Like it seemed like he was serviceable as a kickoff guy, or I mean, here I say that because I don't think you're going to see Mitch Jeter kicking off if he has this hip injury, because that's a totally different motion than just place kicking. It's a little bit more strenuous, obviously. But reading between the lines of what Marty Biaggi was saying, sounds like you might see Mitch Jeter place kick. And if there's a big field goal and he's healthy enough by Saturday to attempt it, I think you see Jeter. I don't think you see him kicking off. But there is also a chance that you see Zach Yoakum having to kick a really big field goal at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in a tight game against Georgia Tech. Like, I think that's a possibility. So to answer your question, Michael Ferguson, Jeter's status up in the air as far as I know. Right, Jack?
Yeah, Biaggi said that he could play, but it's not certain. I kind of like the break glass if necessary approach on some level, like have Zach Yoakum kick the extra points, which he did well. Have what's his name? Eric Goins do kickoffs, which I think he was mostly touchbacks. And there's also the argument that having your kicker come in cold for a huge 45-yard field goal is probably 100%. Not the best idea. Yeah. So they're gonna have to make that decision, but I mean, we don't know that right now how serious it is. We just gotta wait until game day.
Go to blueandgold.com because I wrote a kicker story, kind of broke down. There's a couple other names in there, obviously, that are in the mix. But I do think if it's not Jeter kicking a big 40-yard field goal, I would think it has to be Zach Yoakum, guy that's been around, but I will say the last thing that Notre Dame wants in this game is to have to make a big field goal to either win or tie or do whatever there. So just go out and play your game and hope it doesn't come to that.
We should also add that like it's not like they're making this decision on the fly. Like they obviously had a plan in case Mitch Jeter got injured. Like teams have plans in case the long snapper got injured. Hello, Cole Kmet.
Cole Kmet shouts to Cole Kmet. All right. So
obviously Notre Dame has a plan here, and they know what they're
100%. Yeah, and that's in that story at blueandgold.com if you guys go check that out. Here's the last question from a blueandgold.com message board subscriber. It's not really a question. It's from our friend Aerofan624. Again, like I said, this show is brought to you by Aerofan624 and Augie's Locker Room tonight, because I think this is 3 of 5 questions from Aero. He's asking good questions. What can you say? Yeah. And he asks a lot of them, so it's easier to pick from him. Like I said, this is more of a statement. Jack, true or false, Marcus Freeman getting to 11-1, given how bad that loss was. It was a really bad one to NIU at home, and how many injuries are piling up, is a top 5 coaching job. I'm going to go really quickly here. That's very subjective. Top 5 coaching relative to what other coaches did this year. It makes him a top 5 coach. Like, I don't know exactly what Arrow was meaning by that. I think it's probably the former if it's one of those two things. I don't know. You have to see what all the other coaches did, but I will just say it would be a heck of a job, because after that loss, Jack, and earlier in the show, I kind of said, put ourselves in the moment of writing about that in early September, just thinking, oh my gosh, what the heck just happened? I was thinking 9-3 at that point. I know you were a little bit more optimistic, and you were like, this is the one-off. this is not who they are, and they have a chance to show that. But still, even at 5-1, I think there are some people thinking that team could show up again. And if it does, you're going to lose to anybody. And, you're going to lose to Georgia Tech. You're going to lose the Navy. You're going to lose the Army. You're going to lose the USC on the road. That's just, if you show up that way, you can lose to 1-5 Florida State at home. You can lose to Virginia at home. Anything is on the table if that team shows up. All of that in mind, if that team eventually sits there at the end of the year and is at 11-1 and is a shoe-in for the college football playoff, heck of a job by Marcus Freeman. There will be some things that I've said in September and October that I should probably apologize for at that point if he gets to 11-1, because I personally would not have seen that coming. I thought this was a 9-3 team after it lost to NIU. If it gets to 11-1, heck of a job by Marcus Freeman. I know this is premature, but it's a question that was asked today. I thought it was an interesting one and a really good way to round out the show. Those are my thoughts, man. Heck of a job if it happens.
Right. Yeah. Heck of a job if it happens. I don't think I would say top 5 coaching job, because going back to what you said about, like, I thought this was more of a one-off. Like, I still think it was a one-off. I'm still not sure there aren't going to be more one-offs. And Howard Cross came in and had a really thought-provoking quote when I asked him, like, how have you seen the preparation improve? And he said this was an extremely good lesson at talking about NIU, and it was. And, like, yes, but you guys shouldn't have needed to learn that lesson, because you should have learned it 2 years ago against Marshall, or you should have just prepared for Northern Illinois like it was any other team, knowing that upsets happen in college football all the time. So you still need to figure out a way to prevent a loss like that again. But, I mean, obviously, having the team get their heads together, blow out Purdue the next week, I think that was probably more significant than we gave it credit for at the time. Not just winning that game, but doing it in the way that they did. I think that calmed down a lot of people. Maybe not externally, but internally, I think it did. And the point I was impressed. The point I will listen to more on, like, giving Freeman a lot of credit for this coaching job, if they go 11-1, maybe even win a game in December or early January, would be the injuries aspect, because you lost a lot. You lost a superstar in Morrison, a budding superstar in Traore, your best offensive tackle in Jagasaw, in an offensive tackle situation that wasn't great. You lost a late breakout star in Botello. Your starting center, who you thought was one of your best offensive linemen, Ashton Craig, and those are only the season enders. You lost Billy Shrouth, who's probably your best offensive lineman for most of the season. Gabriel Rubio
has hardly played.
Say it again.
Jordan Faison has hardly played.
Mitchell Evans has been a shell of himself. Riley Leonard clearly wasn't healthy in the second half of the NIU game. Gabe Rubio, you just got him back. I can't stress enough how important it is to have him back, because he really, really helps the run defense. And the word I want to use to describe Rubio's impact and he really stabilizes the run defense, because I think Anye and Heinisch are both good players in their own right, and hopefully whatever Anye is dealing with, he gets better, obviously. But I think together they weren't good enough defending the run, and Rubio really stabilizes that now with Heinisch active.
Yeah, the Rubio quotes were awesome last night. I know you put some on social media. Al Golden says he's a rolling ball of nails. I mean, I've heard a lot of things from football coaches and players to describe players. That's a crazy one. It says he loves the game as well. Riley Mills says when Rube goes in, and that's what he called him, Rube, there's going to be chaos. If he's in there, someone's getting put on their butt. And you can kind of see from that photo, look at the lineman. He's like, holy crap, I've got a lot to deal with here. And obviously that's the backup Stanford quarterback that he's after right there. So, yeah, he's like an agent of chaos. And to your point, Jack, Notre Dame was missing that along the defensive line. So it's huge to have him back. I think that's a really good point. And, yeah, I've made all my points that I want to make on this Freeman thing. If it happens, they're still 6 games away. So much can happen in the next 6 games. This will be my last point on this, Jack. If it happens, if Notre Dame goes 11-1, I think I owe somebody his flowers, and that would be Marcus Freeman deserves some flowers. If you know, you know. In the comments, I want to see if you know, you know. But that's all I got to say. If Notre Dame goes 11-1, Marcus Freeman and a whole lot of other people in this Fighting Irish program deserve a whole lot of flowers.
Yeah, it would be a great coaching job. I think looking back, and this is kind of what I thought at the time, we both overreacted to the NIU. We meaning the collective. We both overreacted to NIU in that like that was not who this team is, but we didn't overreact to NIU in that like that was just such an inexcusable loss that is going to hang like a storm cloud over the season until they do eventually go 11-1, if they do.
Yeah. Yep. So much to cover between now and then, Jack. Huge one in Atlanta against Georgia Tech this weekend, and then another big one at MetLife Stadium against Navy. If they can get through those two, which I think are quality wins. I mean, you're talking about a 5-2 Yellow Jackets team, 5-0 midshipman team. Feeling really good about yourselves coming home. Pair of home games after a bye week against a 1-5 Florida State team, which they're so bad to the point that I don't even think them being bad scares you if you're Notre Dame, if that makes sense. We'll talk about that later. But like Clemson had a down year last year, but it wasn't so bad to the point where I went in there and I was like, oh, Notre Dame's just going to roll them. I was actually scared from a Notre Dame perspective that I'm like, they're bad, but they could still play to a point of beating this Notre Dame team, and that's exactly what they did. I don't think Florida State is that. I don't think Virginia is that. If you get through these next two games, you're probably in a really good spot heading into that Army game and then heading in that USC game. So that's kind of why we're having this 11-1 conversation, because just like after the Texas A&M game, 11-1 path is there. It's always been there. You didn't think that involved losing to Northern Illinois, but here you are. So yeah, that's my last spiel. Very, very interesting next couple of weeks. We hope that you guys are following along with it here on the Blue and Gold YouTube channel. Like this video, subscribe to this channel. Go to blueandgold.com for sure to get a whole lot of preview content for the Georgia Tech game. We are going to be up late recapping the Georgia Tech game, and then same thing for Navy as well. So the beat goes on, Jack. I thought this was a really good show and can't wait to do it same time with you next week as well.